Okay, everybody. Short story collection time. Okay. Let's start with... I'm assuming all these are new. At least they seem to be new to me. Effa, meeting the attendants. Description, a previously unpublished short story from the online collection set at the beginning of part 2. Effa meets Fran and Gil, Mine's new temple attendants. Okay. Would someone from the lower city welcome such well-dressed strangers? How does she feel about them bringing her daughter home, especially so soon after the High Bishop threatened her with execution? This is one of my ideas for the anime Blu-ray bonus short story. I went with Delia's in the end, so I posted this one online. Huh. I'm home, Mom. I was drawing water from the well when Mine called out to me from behind. She must have just returned from the temple. I picked up my bucket of water and turned to see her and Lutz entirely as expected. Welcome back, I said to them both, and... Who's that with you? Accompanying my daughter were two people I didn't recognize. One was a boy who looked to be about Lutz's age, while the other was a young man I doubted they were from this part of the city. Their clothes actually fit them, and they stood politely while anxiously looking around. So I'm guessing that Mine had gotten them fancy clothes from... Yeah, she had to have gotten them clothes or else they wouldn't have been able to leave with the... because they had to leave in their gray priest robes and that wouldn't have flown. Or flown, whatever. What the fuck am I saying? Wait. I think Gil is supposed to be, 10? At this point, so no, he's not Lutz's age. He's probably Lutz's height, but not Lutz's age. Because Lutz and Mine are the same age. Because they had their baptisms at the same time. They must have been from the wealthy side of town where the Gilberta Company was located. Did something happen again? The last time I'd seen a Laharo in the Gilberta Company's uniform, Mine had suddenly collapsed in town and needed to be carried home. It had taken me as much strength as I could muster not to faint after hearing the burden she had put on Mrs. Karina. Mine, what did you do this time, I asked. Nothing, she exclaimed in response. I can't believe you have so little trust in me. That's so mean. Mean or not, she must have done something for people this well-dressed to have come all the way to the poor side of town. I turned to Lutz instead. He told Mine it was her own fault for causing trouble all the time, then answered my unspoken question. It's fine, Mrs. Effa. Mine's telling the truth. Oh, I see. Mom, why do you only trust Lutz? Because he tells the truth, dude! I continued to focus on Lutz, completely ignoring Mine's complaint. Who are these two, then? We heard introduce them. More often than not, they're going to bring Mine home from now on. Let's continue this discussion inside, Mine said, looking around as if on guard against our neighbors. I noticed all the people giving us strange looks and nodded. For these two to have brought Mine back, they must have been from the temple. Whatever we needed to talk about couldn't be done in public. Yeah, because they don't need anybody knowing that she went to the temple. I think I got a sore throat. We all went inside where the duo from the temple once again looked around. The boy seemed more curious than anything, but the grimace on the young man's face made his displeasure more than clear. I couldn't blame him for his reaction. Our home wasn't anywhere near as clean as a temple. It might be better for all of us if they stop at the well whenever they drop Mine home. I was trying to figure out how best to host our guests when Mine started introducing them to me, speaking as if she hadn't even noticed the air in the room. Remember how the high priest said that I'd get my own attendants upon becoming an apprentice? Well, here they are, Mom. Meet Fran and Gil. Indeed, the older of the two said, I am Fran and this is Gil. It's a pleasure to meet you. Before I could even think of a response, the pair suddenly knelt and crossed their arms in front of their chests. I stared at them in shock and took a cautious step back, even putting a hand on Mine's shoulder and trying to hide her behind... Oh, that's trying to hide behind her. I'm like, dude, you're really taller than her. That's not happening. Trying to hide her behind me. Why? Don't panic, Mom. They're just, showing their respect. That's kind of what I thought might have been. Mine winced a little, then came up from behind me and patted her two attendants on their shoulders. Fran, Gil, please don't kneel here. My mom won't understand what you're doing. But it's fine, Mine said, cutting the young man short. When you're in the lower city, do as we do. Fran had more to say, but he simply nodded and stood up. That was a relief. Though he'd acted with the best intentions, I was terribly worried about him and the younger attendant dirtying their clothes. Yeah, I don't blame her on that one. Just as I feared, look at those white marks on their knees. Mom, Mine said, under orders from the high priest, Fran needs to be able to manage my health by autumn. I won't always be free to bring Mine home, Lutz added, looking apologetic. On days I'm too busy, Fran and Gil will take my place. Mine couldn't make the journey on her own. The temple was too far, and no matter how healthy she looked on any given day, there was a chance she might fall sick before she got home. Yeah, makes sense. By assigning these 2 attendants to her, the high priest was carrying out his promise to look after mine as much as he could. I get how you must feel about them coming from the temple, but they're good people. You can trust them, Les assured me. Of course, we don't want the neighbors to know the truth about them, so we plan to say they're working with the Gilberta Company. We'd appreciate it if you play along. I can't thank you enough for how much you support mine, but shouldn't you focus on your own work? You don't need to do all this when you already have your hands full. Taking her to the temple, bringing her home, and inspecting her health were all duties for her family and now her new attendants to take care of. Les was sweet to have helped us for this long, but we couldn't keep interfering with his apprenticeship. Les shook his head. Master Benno told me to stick with her, so keeping an eye on her is part of my job. Truth be told, it's for our benefit as well as hers. As it turned out, mine's inventions were of great value to the Gilberta Company. Benno couldn't risk losing such an important connection. That reminds me, there was that shocking business exchange at Mrs. Karina's house. Yeah, the whole where she ended up earning, dang it, how much was it? 2 large gold coins or something? I don't know, maybe it was 1 gold coin. I have no clue at this point. I thought back to the sums of money I'd seen, and a shiver ran down my spine. The world of merchants was too crazy for me to understand. It made me all the more grateful for Lutz's assistance. If you insist, I said, Lutz, Fran, Gail, my daughter's health is in your hands. Lutz smiled at me and then at Fran and Gail. The attendants' tense expressions eased in response. I'd expected them to look more frustrated or to show some other sign of having an unpleasant job forced on them, but they started patting each other on the back. Oh. Only then did it hit me. Fran hadn't grimaced about how dirty our home was. He had just been anxious about being somewhere new and about whether or not I would accept him and Gil. I shouldn't have jumped to conclusions. I mean, I can understand her worrying about the clothes, considering you don't want to have dirty clothes. But then again, they probably I assume they washed the clothes. So. Les had asked me to trust mine's new attendants, and trust them I would. They spoke and carried themselves politely as I started to explain mine's plans for tomorrow. I could already imagine how our neighbors would react to their visits. They're going to bombard me with questions tomorrow, aren't they? Yep. They will. Okay, here we go, next one. Rico, Change Begins. Description, a previously unpublished short story from the online collection that takes place early in Part 2. Rico, a child stuck in the orphanage's basement, experiences the start of a great change. Okay, so this is when she liberates the orphanage, essentially. Though he always had a name, it never came up in the main story because he hardly remembered it and nobody really spoke to him. Okay, this started out as a short story for the manga, but was too dark for a volume aimed at younger readers. Okay, I am curious as to what is going to happen in this one. So I posted it online instead. Please enjoy a happier story featuring Rico in Part 2, Volume 3 of the manga release. Light shone into the basement from a window too high for anyone but an adult to reach, leaving a bright rectangle on the wall. My thoughts felt hazy as I watched it move ever so slowly toward the floor. It's almost time, I think. Just a little while longer, then our divine guest would arrive. I could tell as much from the light on the wall and the ringing of the bell. I'm hungry. We didn't really move or speak. There was nothing for us to do but wait. Moving around made the hunger pangs worse, and it would get hotter as morning turned to noon. The only sound was the rustling of hay whenever someone readjusted themselves. The light from the window was hurting my eyes, so I closed them and lay down. I was so sweaty from the heat that hay clung to my face and body. It felt gross, enough that I wanted to wipe it away, but I didn't have the strength to move my arms. Beneath me was the cloth we used as blankets during the winter. I squirmed against it until the hay no longer stuck to me, not even caring how dirty it was. Where did everyone go? There were distant memories up to me now, but there had once been a time when gray shrine maidens would come to the basement to wash us clean and give us food. Back then, our days weren't spent lying around too weary to move. We would actually run around and play. I vaguely remembered climbing onto the table and jumping between bales of hay. Rather than silence, the room had been full of laughter and upset voices. As thoughts of the past ran through my mind, I stared at the door separating us from the rest of the world. There were stairs on the other side, but only those with permission could use them. The shrine maidens who brought us food, or those of us who managed to survive long enough to reach baptism age and escape. It's so far away. The largest of us lay closest to the door, so they received more food than the rest of us. I was small in comparison, and the others had driven me to the opposite end of the room. It took a while for whatever food remained to reach me, and the scraps that did were usually stolen by those around me. Is it time yet? I'm surprised to even survive this long. The gray shrine maidens who brought us our meals had once been stuck in this same basement. Each morning they opened the window too high for us to reach, changed our chamber pot, and fetched the bowls from the night before, and put down breakfast and water. Around noon, they simply swapped the bowls at night, they switched the bowls again, and gave us more water before closing the window. Every day was more of the same. My turn or not, I really loathed coming here, came a voice through the door. Nonetheless, this is part of our job as apprentice Grey Shrine Maidens. You open the door, Rosina. I think not. I shall place the food while you open the door. Goodness, Rosina, could you be more considerate? I carried the bowls here, not you. Let us get this over with. I wish to leave as soon as I can. As the voices grew louder, we all crawled around the table, or toward the table. It was time. We needed to act fast if we wanted to eat. The 3 apprentice Shrine Maidens who came into the basement split up. One put food on the table, another opened the window, and the last gathered together past yesterday's bowls that were still scattered about. In the basement, even something as simple as eating was a struggle. The Shrine Maidens always lined the bowls up on the table. Moving was hard for me, so was clambering up onto a chair to reach the food, but I needed to act quickly or the other kids would eat it all. A hand shot out toward the bowl I'd managed to grab. I needed to protect it, I moved to protect it, only to have it knocked from my grasp. Come on, give the kids some food. It struck the ground with a clatter, and a piece of soup-soaked bread rolled across the hay. I dove down from my chair, then lunged at the morsel and pulled it into the safety of my mouth. It was gritty with dirt, but its pleasant taste still spread across my tongue. Oh, it's gone. I waited so long for the divine gifts to arrive, only to receive a single piece of bread. We were given so little food that my hunger never went away. I crawled over to where the bowl had landed and licked it until the taste of soup faded away completely. Maybe I could get some joy from the spoon. Nope, he took it. The boy next to me, the healthiest of us all, was sitting next to the table lapping at my spoon as well as his own. I'd eaten so little, but my only choice was to sprawl out and wait for the next divine gifts to arrive. How long until we're fed again? Jesus Christ. Do they only get 1 meal a day? Because surely, mine and the others got 3 meals a day? Don't they get 3 meals a day? Even if it's scraps? I turned to the light still moving down the wall. It wouldn't be any time soon. The bell rang again, and young voices reached us through the open window. Were there commoners visiting the temple today? It was a strange time for them to be here, if so. Out of nowhere, a dull thump shook the basement and made me twitch. What was going on? I think this is when mine and Gil showed up. I was more curious than afraid, so I turned to the source of the noise just in time to see a hole appear on the wall beside me. A door I'd never even noticed, one that had always been firmly shut, opened with a loud creak, flooding the basement with summer light. A cool wind came with it, easing the heavy air. Through the open door, I saw 2 people. I couldn't raise my head enough to see more than their legs, but I grunted and groaned as I tried to stumble to my feet. No sooner had the basement lit up than something sweet fell to the ground. I recognized the smell. Our divine gifts had come earlier than usual, and through a door at the opposite of the end of the basement, a door I just so happened to be closest to, I desperately crawled through it before anyone else could react, seized the tasty smelling thing that was right before my eyes, and eagerly bit into it. Whatever I was eating reminded me of bread, only it was soft and surprisingly easy to chew. I didn't even need soup to soak it in. Wow. My mouth was getting dry, but it didn't matter. I couldn't drink water or someone would steal the rest of my food. Instead, I continued to shove what must have been bread in my mouth, almost in a daze. Not even a loud thumping sound and a cry of, "Sister Mine!" was enough to pull me from my trance. Okay, this is when she passed out from seeing all this. It's so good. Sister Mine! Sister Mine! Someone cried tearfully. We were all dragged back into the basement and the door was shut behind us. Not one of us resisted. We were too focused on eating. Oh, it's all gone. As that realization set in, my stomach started to ache. I wasn't sure whether the strange bread was to blame or I'd simply eaten too much. Probably the latter. But it didn't matter. My heart was full to bursting. Who knew when I'd get to eat that much again? I took a sip of water, then rolled on the ground in delight, savoring the taste of that pleasant-smelling bread. It was nicer and less dense than the bread we usually received, and I didn't even need soup to help it go down. Satisfied, I went back to watching the light on the wall. It was late at night, well past our last meal for the day, when the same thunk from before shook the basement walls. The back door opened with a creak, and a child carrying something that smelled nice snuck in. "Shh," he said. "I'm Gil, Sister Mine's apprentice attendant. Boys aren't allowed down here, so keep this a secret, okay?" If staying quiet meant getting more food, then I wouldn't make a sound. The others must have had the same thought. They simply nodded in response. "This is from Sister Mine," Gil said. "We won't be able to wash you all until you've eaten and regained some of your strength." The boy handed out more bread, this time with soup. We each received the same amount, and there was far more bowls than usual. "Your hands are dirty. Don't stick them in your food. Eat with your spoons instead." "Hey, no stealing. Everyone gets an equal share." Gil gave us all sorts of orders while we ate. I didn't know why he was being so bossy, but a kid much bigger and older than me smiled and muttered that that's what Maddie used to say. It was barely a whisper. His voice was hoarse from how little we all spoke, but Gil overheard him nonetheless. Maddie used to look after me too, he said, eyes wide with surprise. Then a grin spread across his face. She was real strict about how we ate, huh? Who's Maddie? I didn't understand them, but that wasn't important. For the first time in forever, I was actually enjoying a meal. I couldn't remember I'd last managed to fill my belly without someone trying to steal from me. I'll come back this time tomorrow, Gil said. Sister mine asked me to. Night. And with that, he left as quickly and as quietly as he'd come. If what he'd said was true, then we'd receive more food every night from now on. My cheeks twitched as a rare expression of delight made it onto my face. He's coming back tomorrow? He said good night. Low murmurs carried through the basement, maybe because we weren't hungry for once, or maybe because of Gil. People were actually speaking to each other. I rolled on the hay, my stomach full. Even in the dead of night, the moon felt so much brighter than usual. I turned to the window and saw the moon whiter and more radiant than I could ever remember. For some strange reason, seeing it cut through the darkness made me cry. Oh, I feel so bad for them. I'm just so glad they got better. Ugh, my freaking throat. It's not hurting because of me talking and doing this. It started hurting this morning when I got up out of bed. So I don't know if I maybe caught something or I don't know, but it hurts. Brunhilde, debuting Dies with Lady Rosemine. A previously unpublished short story from the online collection, set partway through Part 4, Volume 5. I cannot talk. Brunhilde depicts the dyeing contest from the perspective of an apprentice art attendant. Rosemine seems a little out of the loop, but she makes it through socializing by the skin of her teeth. This was going to be part of the main story, but it seemed a little out of place, so I made it into a short story instead. I mean, she could have added it to the end of the book, like she does with some of the other stories, but anyway. So I made it into a short story instead. Hopefully it conveys the contrast between Rosemine's perspective and those of most other nobles. Despite her age, Lady Rosemine set more trends than any other member of Ehrenfest's archducal family. Her influence extended to recipes, education, fashion, music, and printing. That was why I, so enraged to be the future Guy Groschel, wished to serve her most of all. I wanted to promote her trends at the Royal Academy and increase her duchy sway on the national stage, no matter how marginally. In the end, we couldn't have asked for a better reception. Lady Rosemine's trends spread through the Royal Academy with just as much fervor as at Ehrenfest, attracting the attention of even Klassenberg and the Sovereignty. I'd wanted to capitalize on that momentum and with the release of even more new products, but not one of them was ready to be revealed. Ehrenfest has so many commoners that I proposed working them around the clock to get our products out on time, but Lady Rosemine had furrowed her brow and shook her head. Imagine I woke up one day and upon seeing the size of my retinue, elect to give you all an extra helping of work, she said. Now imagine if my other retainers leave and you suddenly find their duties thrust upon you. Not as a temporary measure, but as a permanent expectation. How would you feel about that? I doubt I could complete the duties of an entire retinue on my own, I replied. The same is true for commoners. Everyone has their role in society. Farmers grow crops, craftspeople make things, soldiers keep the peace, and merchants do business. We're setting up new workshops, but not everyone is suited to working in them. Just as nobles, even those with an abundance of mana, aren't able to do everything themselves, there's only so much we can expect our commoners to bear. To be frank, I still wasn't sure what Lady Rosemine had meant. Commoners always did as they were told. I mean, yes, you can push them to work around the clock, but that means the quality could possibly drop, which means that it would look bad on you guys, so it's best not to do that. I'd never had cause to stop and think about their careers or other circumstances. Did we really need to concern ourselves with their burden? We could just give the order and they would figure it out themselves. Lady Rosemine, known to many as the Saint of Ehrenfest, had a temple upbringing that made her tough to follow. Her actions and stances frequently confused me, and Riarda for that matter. And my attempts to bring her printing and street to my home province of Groschel had led to all manner of surprises. As it turned out, Lady Rosemine went to the lower city and instructed the craftspeople there in person. Hartmann and Feline were both against it for obvious reasons, but they steeled their resolve and went with her anyway. I would never have gone to the lower city by choice, but Lady Rosemine insisted that I check on my workers in Groschel firsthand, and my father had instructed me to remain with her at all times. Accompanying her when she nonchalantly headed to the lower city was a nightmarish ordeal. Its streets were rank with a foul odor, and its commoners were no less unpleasant. They spoke crudely and carried themselves like beasts, all while looking the part. There was nothing to be found in that wretched place but filth. By beautifying Ehrenfest's lower city, we can improve Ob Ehrenfest's reputation in the eyes of merchants from other duchies. Lady Rosamund had explained, conveying the Archduke's words with a smile. Caring only about the areas meant for nobles and neglecting the lower city was apparently as foolish as fancying up one's parlor and bedrooms, only to leave the front door and garden untouched. Lady Rosamund toured the lower city and did everything in her power to make the Gutenberg's work run smoothly. She clearly trusted them, and the way they understood what she wanted from a mere few words seemed to make for an ideal working relationship. It was strange to observe, all things considered. We noble retainers hadn't even come close to forming such tight-knit connections with Our Lady. I mean, she was a commoner before this. Obviously, they don't know that. So, of course, she knows how to talk to them. So, obviously, they're going to understand and be okay with her. Lady Rosamund has rather smooth relationships with her temple attendants, Hartman said with a shrug. He had visited the temple despite his status as an archnoble. It would seem that time and mutual understanding really are key. Our Lady's temple attendants seem to perform the work of attendants and scholars. Hartman said they have particular roles to attend to, be it managing the orphanage, overseeing her workshop, assisting with her duties as the High Bishop, or maintaining communication with the lower city. Matters advanced rather quickly when I spoke about scholarly work and conversed with Fran and the others about their personal duties, Hartman continued. Lady Rosamund will need to learn the ways of noble society at large. That much is a given, but we must make compromises if we hope to earn her trust. I suspect that Ehrenfest will, as time goes on, develop with Our Lady at its center. She is known as its saint for a reason. Hartman beamed from ear to ear, his faith in Lady Rosamund unwavering. His worship of her had risen to even more dangerous heights since he started visiting the temple. Oh, boy. I still can't believe that Hartman... Actually, it makes sense that Hartman would figure it out, considering how obsessed he is with Lady Rosamund, that he figured out she was actually a commoner before all this. Of course he would figure it out. He's a freaking scholar, for crying out loud. They're known for getting intel. Her temple attendants, he says. Up until now, such people had been of no interest to me. They were merely orphan grey priests and shrine maidens, but both Hartman and Feline professed their competence, and seeing them both visit the temple had piqued my curiosity. I mean, also, Ferdinand kind of trusts them, so, I mean, if he trusts them, I think it says more than enough. Soon enough, a meeting about debuting Lady Rosamund's dyed cloth was scheduled. We would meet with the relevant merchants, not at the castle, but at the temple. Not too long ago, it had been reviled more than anywhere else in Ehrenfest, yet my fellow retainers and even Lady Elvira entered without the slightest hesitation. I couldn't risk them leaving me behind. Despite my nerves, I stepped into the temple. It was as clean as people had told me, as clean as the castle, in fact, and the furniture was pristine enough for even an archnoble to use. The tea and sweets that Lady Rosamund's attendants served were delightful, and it soon became apparent that her days here were no worse than those she spent in the castle. Fran was trained by Ferdinand himself and received notably high marks, Lady Rosamund declared, with a proud smile, boasting about her temple attendants. Her genuine praise both warmed my heart and struck me with anxiety. Would she speak of me so generously? I don't remember if she does or not. Let me know. This is our first time consulting merchants for a tea party, let alone one meant for debuting dyed goods. The very idea had shocked me, but the merchants had done a fine job of communicating Lady Rosamund's intentions to Lady Elvira, who had continued to lead the meeting in a noble fashion. I could sense deep down that I wouldn't last as Lady Rosamund's retainer unless I developed the same talent for socializing. Lady Rosamund broke from her quiet pondering to abruptly shout, "Renaissance!" thus selecting her fashion-related title. Curiously enough, though she had spoken with such certainty, she still seemed a little conflicted. Perhaps she isn't satisfied with the name she created? No, I think it's because she nobody else would understand what the heck she's talking about, and wouldn't get wouldn't get the meaning behind it, essentially, because they're not from Earth. On the day of the debut, the Gilberta Company arrived at the time we had agreed upon and started setting up strange wooden frames. I exchanged a look with Lady Elvira. There hadn't been any mention of such frames during our meeting. Otto, what are those frames? Lady Elvira asked. As this is a tea party first and the debut second, we have designed these frames to allow even those sitting further away to see the cloth, he answered. I'd assumed we would present the cloth as tapestries or exhibit small parts and allow our guests to come and touch those that interested them. Lady Elvira seemed to have drawn the same conclusion, but those of the Gilberta Company had something else in mind. They were doing exactly what Lady Rosamund wanted. Though we'd gone to the trouble of setting up a meeting, our intentions still weren't completely aligned. We could remedy that by ordering the merchants to stop and put the frames away. In fact, that would certainly have been our first choice, but this event was being held at Lady Rosamund's request, and the current approach was simply the norm for her. Let us do as she pleases. With a glance, I signaled my conclusion to Lady Elvira. She heaved a defeated sigh and then said, "It is true that we lack the time for each piece of cloth to be directly presented to each person." Again, I was reminded that I wasn't fully in tune with my lady, yet each time she said or did something that troubled me, I understood more clearly how she must have felt whenever she encountered something strange to her in the castle. Despite a few mishaps, our preparations went smoothly. My only complaint was how the wooden frames presented the new cloth. The Gilberta Company was a nouveau riche business business that had expanded its sales into the castle with Lady Rosemine's support. Before then, it had only dealt with lay nobles and men nobles, which showed in how its merchants were displaying our product. "They're doing our wonderful cloth a grave disservice," I muttered, and assisted with popularizing Lady Rosemine's trends at the Royal Academy, but this was a much greater task. Creating future trends from scratch. I started bombarding the merchants with orders. The cloth needed to be shown at its absolute best. "It is in our best interest to trust Brunhilde's noble expertise," Lady Rosemine said as I continued to dole out instructions. "Merchants use this as a learning opportunity." A pleasant warmth spread through my chest. My lady trusted my instincts. I must do everything I can for her. After lunch, we convened with the merchants to consider introductions and the sale of Lady Rosemine's new cloth. As this was but a debut, no product would change hands today. Instead, attendees would state the number assigned to their favorite cloth, and they'd be given the names of the workshop and the dyer that produced it so they could order the cloth themselves when the tea party concluded. I had assumed the Gilberta Company would refuse to share arch noble patronage with other workshops, but I was sorely mistaken. I mean, the Gilberta Company doesn't really deal with dyed cloth. They deal with the actual products. They don't dye the cloth themselves, is what I'm saying. So, yeah. How strange. One would expect merchants to strive for as many noble connections as they can get. "We are ready to accept orders from our honorable patron, Lady Rosemine." Lady Elvira was present as we spoke with the Gilberta Company. Lady Aurelia, Lord Lamprecht's first wife from Arensbach, was with her. Okay, so this is after that. Okay. Oh, yeah, it was, because they were trying to find some cloth to use for a new veil for her. I apologize, but this veil is... No matter what Lady Rosemine or Lady Elvira said, Lady Aurelia refused to remove the Arensbach cloth covering her face. It displeased me, to say the least. Just what purpose does her obstinacy serve? I mean, she's afraid. She looks like what was it? Oh, yeah, she looks like Lady Gabriella, is what it is. She looks like Veronica's mother. And that freaks her out because everybody hates her in Ehrenfest. So she doesn't want to be hated. That's why she hides. It was doing her no favors and would only make people more reluctant to accept her. Had she failed to consider Lady Elvira's position and the problems that taking a bride from Arensbach had caused within her faction? Seeing the concern in Lady Elvira's eyes made me seethe with silent fury. As my emotions continued to fester, Lady Rosemine cocked her head at Lady Aurelia and made an unexpected proposal. "If you insist on wearing a veil, perhaps you could wear one made with Ehrenfest cloth. That would at least somewhat demonstrate that you consider our duchy to be your new home." I mean, okay, that works. I would never have dared to ask the niece of Ob Arensbach to cast aside her headdress made with Greater Duchy cloth for something made here in Ehrenfest. By all rights, the very idea might be taken as an insult to Arensbach. Lady Elvira noted that it certainly would change Aurelia's appearance, but her intention was to provide the woman a chance to politely refuse. I expected Lady Aurelia to respond as any noble of a Greater Duchy would with outright disapproval, but she accepted the idea almost at once. She sounded relieved. Even I could only assume that she did want to be welcome in our duchy, but simply could not bear to uncover her face. Lady Aurelia had an attendant, who she had brought along with her when she married into Ehrenfest, but the girl was nowhere to be seen. Instead, Lady Elvira had paired Lord Lamprecht's first wife with one of her own attendants for the day. Lady Aurelia could not speak freely in these circumstances, but she at least seemed to recognize that Lady Rosemine wasn't her enemy. From there, Lady Aurelia started to follow Lady Rosemine. She took care to match my lady's smaller strides, barely moving at all with each step. Together with my fellow retainers, I listened to the pair chat about the cloth being debuted. It was quite the experience. At some moments, I had to resist putting my head in my hands. At others, I almost burst into laughter. Lady Aurelia soon revealed that her veil was embroidered with a magic circle. Under normal circumstances, one would treat such a garment with caution and investigate the threat it posed, but Lady Rosemine wore a relaxed smile and simply celebrated the circle's purpose, allowing its wearer to see those around them unimpeded. Which makes sense. You'd want to be able to see, so that magic circle being there is a good thing. That is far from the most pressing issue. Upon hearing the nice things Lord Lampert had said about her, Lady Rosemont declared that she would provide the cloth for Lady Aurelia's new veil. I merely exchanged looks with the other retainers. How could we intervene when it was Lady Rosemont's intention to welcome Lady Aurelia, who responded to the proposal with timid words of appreciation? Lady Rosemont, it should fall to Lampert, her husband, to give his wife new cloth. Lady Aurelia noted that she favored cute cloth, but could not use it for it did not suit her features. Lady Rosemont replied that the clash was irrelevant. Lady Aurelia's face would not be visible in any case. My lady's perspective is abnormal, to say the least. I paid close attention to the numbers by the cloth, making a mental note of which ones Lady Aurelia examined most. I also kept an eye on the pieces that Lady Rosemont gravitated toward. The two women had surprisingly similar tastes, at least, based on the numbers I assigned to them. This one seems most appropriate for Lady Rosemont's winter attire. Of all the cloth, one piece in particular stood out to me. How it had been dyed was a mystery to me. Its hue changed from crimson to more vibrant shades of red, but it was more intriguing than the other frames I'd seen. I recalled the bubble skirt that Lady Rosemont had favored in the summer. If we elected to make something of the same style, this cloth would be ideal. After inspecting every one of the displays with Lady Aurelia, Lady Rosemont suddenly lost all motivation. We had yet to properly debut them, but she slumped her shoulders in disappointment and expressed almost no interest in the cloth from that point on. It was a worrying reaction considering how much she had been looking forward to today. Perhaps none of the cloth suited her? No! I think it's the fact that she couldn't figure out which one was dyed by her mom. I think that's what the problem was. Well, the cloth on display is subpar. Compared to the cloth Riarda had arranged in the past, the pieces before me now bore glaring imperfections. I certainly questioned the dyer's talents, but I would need to make do. Our guests were soon to arrive, and the success of our tea party would determine the future of dyeing in Ehrenfest. It is my duty as an attendant to assure this debut succeeds. No sooner had the tea party begun than Lady Rosemont engaged in lively conversation, speaking exclusively about Ahrensbach's stories and dishes. By all means, her speaking with Lady Aurelia would make a good impression, but this is all wrong. Our very reason for being here was to promote the new cloth, so why had my lady neglected to even mention it? Anyone else in her position would start by focusing on current Ahrensbach trends before segueing into Ehrenfest dyes. From there, she could foray into personal taste, extracting valuable information in the process. Instead, Lady Rosemont had launched into a seemingly aimless ramble about her own interests. Such an indulgent, one-sided conversation would achieve nothing in the way of gathering information. I could see both Lady Elvira and Lady Florencia wearing troubled smiles. I was more concerned with the debut than the stories being shared, so I entrusted all serving work to Lazletta, encircled the dyed cloth, and listening intently to what our guests were saying about it. As expected, this method of debuting our dyes had surprised the arch-noble women, but they ultimately embraced it as a new form of entertainment. This cloth certainly is beautiful. Indeed, all the shades of red made it a sight to behold. Lady Rosemont had asked the lower city's dyeing workshops for cloth she could wear for the winter debut, so their submissions all sported a variety of reds. I saw everything from bitter oranges to the deepest, almost bluish purples. One unusual piece featured a gradient of dark to light red, while another appeared to consist of numerous small dots. The cloth on display was anything but boring. I was accustomed to cloth dyed a single color without any adornment, so I found it hard to imagine how today's examples would translate into clothes. That was doubly true for those decorated with floral patterns or adorned with green flora. It was rare for cloth to be multicolored, so these pieces really caught the eye. The colors being used are delightfully vivid, though I can see countless imperfections. The style of dyeing only came into fashion this spring. The dyer's talents might leave much to be desired, but they are bound to improve in short order, I said, speaking in their defense without a second thought. Lady Rosemont must have influenced me without my knowing. Have you seen cloth dyed in this manner before, Lady Brunhilde? Indeed, Lady Rosemont wanted her cloth to be unique, so Riarda brought her some of an old style. I pointed at one of the pieces on display. This looks closest to what she presented. An elderly noble woman followed my finger with her eyes and smiled. Oh, I see. That was the fashion back in my mother's day. Some dyers strive to bring back the old methods, while others hope to create new ones, I said. The coloring seems in the sample falls in the latter camp, so if we promote its use, we can produce a style of cloth unique to Ehrenfest. Only those with the wealth to support dyers, arch-nobles and particularly wealthy men-nobles to be precise, had received invitations to this debut. I hope that as many of the samples as possible would attract their attention. If any of the cloth catches your eye, take note of the workshop and dyer to purchase it through your business of choice, or order some from scratch. It is through your support that Ehrenfest will propagate its new trends. Lady Rosemont wishes for her entire faction to define these styles together. my. I went around the room and interacted with the guests as though Lady Rosamund were speaking through me. They weren't simply being told what fashions to adopt by those of a higher rank. Instead, they were being asked to choose their favorites and play an active role in shaping the duchy's future trends. Receiving such an invitation from a member of the archducal family will excite them as much as if they themselves had risen in rank. Lady Rosamund has practically made it her motto that all should wear clothes that suit them, I explained. From this abundant selection, she hopes you will choose your favorites and those that will complement you best. Has Lady Rosamund chosen her cloth yet? One of the noblewomen asked. I could sense that everyone around us was listening closely. Despite her desire for them to focus on their own interests, they still wanted to follow my lady's example. Yes, she chose several pieces while we were preparing today's event. Lady Aurelia expressed a desire to have a new veil made in Ehrenfest style, and the cloth we have here seems perfectly suited to that purpose. Lady Charlotte and Lady Florencia have chosen their favorites as well. You can expect to see them wearing clothes made with that cloth during future winter socializing. Oh, my throat. Oh, God, it hurts. A dyed cloth being debuted was on the cutting edge of Ehrenfest fashion. Even members of the archducal family would end up wearing it. The fact that 3 of them had chosen favorites from 3 separate workshops reassured the other noblewomen that they wouldn't need to mimic the choices of their superiors. I looked around the room with renewed interest. Having more or less ensured the success of the debut, I returned to my charge. So, Lady Rosamund. Damn it. Which cloth is most deserving of a title? 3 dyers, chosen by Lady Florencia, Lady Rosamund, and Lady Charlotte respectively, would each be awarded the title of Renaissance. Lady Rosamund had several candidates in mind, but she weakly shook her head. I cannot decide which of these 3 to choose. If not one of them is good enough for you, then so be it. There is no need to award a piece you think is unworthy of a title. The dyers had too little time to perfect their work. Perhaps we could postpone making a choice. Lady Rosamund thought for a moment, then nodded. I would appreciate that. She would give out her title whenever, as it made the most sense to wait until she found someone she truly favored. You need not hand out a title, but your clothes for this year still need to be made, I said. Of your 3 choices, which would you want to wear most? I pointed out which one I preferred, and mentioned that in the right hands it could even be made into attire appropriate for summer. Lady Rosamund smiled at me and nodded again. You have a discerning eye, Brunhilde. Have my clothes made from whichever cloth you think is best. It seems that I really am of use to her. Some time later, Lady Rosamund looked devastated. She stated that my eyes were as keen as she had thought, and quietly lamented not giving her the title. I was unsure to whom she was referring. I suppose, in the end, I was still a long way from fully understanding my lady. I think it was because she hadn't been able to pick out that it was her mom's cloth herself. I'm gonna keep going. Brunhilde, as the daughter of Guy Groschel. A bonus short story from Part 4, Volume 5, set during Rosamund's trip to Groschel. Brunhilde receives a warning that Groschel's branch of the printing industry could fail. As the daughter of the previous province's Guy, she feels duty-bound to see it succeed, but Rosamund's mindset is too hard to comprehend. Only through its conversation with Hartmann and Elvira does she come to better understand her lady's way of thinking. Brunhilde, Hartmann, and Elvira are all purebred nobles, but the environments in which they were raised impact them in unique ways. I put a lot of thought into the defining attributes of Groschel, and many of the particulars when writing this insight into noble society. Lady Brunhilde, these are Lady Rosamund's guest chambers, and attendant informed me. Thank you. I shall prepare them for her while she is performing her ceremonies. Please bring the luggage as soon as you can. It was the latter end of autumn, and we had recently arrived in my home province of Groschel. My first task was to ensure the attendance of my family and state had not erred when preparing these chambers. Then I would unpack Lady Rosamund's daily necessities. Welcome home, sister, said a bright voice. I turned to see Brunhilde, my little sister, moving briskly toward me, her rose-pink hair swaying behind her with each step. She had come here in a hurry to see me. The warm smile on the attendant's face made that clear. Do allow me to assist you, Brunhilde said. In the meantime, would you tell me tales of the Royal Academy? I wish to share them in the winter playroom. In particular, my sister wanted stories that would grant her conversational dominance in the playroom. She was rather precocious, due in part to her constant endeavor to mimic me. It was adorable for the most part, though I wished she would take more care. It frustrated me to see her take on even my less admirable traits. Though I admire your enthusiasm, one cannot overstate the importance of gathering information. You should not state your objectives so clearly. Take care not to make such missteps when conversing with anyone else. My apologies, she said. We have little time together, so I thought to speak bluntly. Time really was of the essence, so we got straight to work preparing the guest chambers. Meanwhile, I spoke of my experience serving as Lady Rosemine's apprentice attendant at the Royal Academy. I touched on it briefly at the end of spring, but living in the castle meant I rarely had the time to speak leisurely. It is when you are anxious or hurried that you must exude elegance the most, I said. Keep that in mind for after I graduate, when you will take over as Lady Rosemine's retainer and work to spread her trends. Did you ask Lady Elvira to train you? Yes, and your efforts this year were rewarded. Lady Elvira welcomed the idea, stating that I should inherit your methods and serve Lady Rosemine as an archnoble so that tea parties with top-ranking duchies and royalty continued to go smoothly. She must have heard that from Cornelius, though I was still glad to know my deeds had received such high praise. I thought back to my time at the academy and giggled. Serving as Lady Rosemine's attendant is quite the task, I confessed. Abrupt summons from the royal family are within the realm of reason, as are meetings with top-ranking duchies one has never spoken to before. It was unthinkable considering our duchy's former rank and its previously modest connections. Prince Anastasius, in particular, tends to make sudden demands, I continued. Riarda went pale as a sheet trying to come up with ways to survive them, though she hid those concerns from Lady Rosemine, of course. Lady Rosemine had shared in her surprise, though, on a considerably smaller scale. As a first year, she had no knowledge of how the academy had used to be, and she seemed to have assumed that its current state was the norm. Her misunderstanding made it even more essential that we attendants hide our anxieties, lest we burden our lady with undue pressure. Bertilli's amber eyes, a mirror of my own, sparkled as I spoke. I recounted how my heart had nearly stopped when Lady Rosemine received an invitation for the royal family and explained that her chefs had since been instructed to have 2 kinds of pound cake ready at all times. A precaution in case she was summoned again. One of pound cake's greatest strengths is that it keeps for several days, I said. This saves the chefs from having to make it daily, though ensuring that everything is ready at all times is still no easy feat. I wonder what they do with the cake if it ends up starting to, go past its prime once they make it. Do they eat it themselves? I don't know what they do with it. I went on to note that pound cake had surprised even greater duchies. Bertilli was especially delighted when I repeated my lady's intentions to create even more kinds of desserts. She was a great lover of all sweet-tasting foods. I doubt Lady Rosemine will receive any such summons this year, as Prince Anastasius had graduated and no new royals debuted during the Archduke Conference, but still. As our conversation continued, I placed the tools of an apprentice scholar on the desk so that it was ready to be used. I also put together a tea cart, ensuring that Lady Rosemine could enjoy her preferred drink at a moment's notice, and checked that its magic tools were functional. From there, I started retrieving Rinsham, soap, and other such products from a nearby box. This blend of Rinsham smells of Raffles, I said. It was introduced just recently by the Gilberta Company. Lady Rosemine recommended it to me, so I'd taken to using it. I ran my fingers through my hair, hoping to spread the aroma. Bertilli brought her face closer, inhaled, and then gazed up at me with an enraptured expression. What a delightful scent, she crowed. You must be the envy of the nobles' quarter to have such easy access to new Rinsham. Which is to say, might I have some? I arranged for shipments to arrive at our winter estate when you go to the nobles' quarter. You will have the great fortune of attending the playroom with a delightful hairpin and while wearing the most enchanting scents. Lady Rosemine had paid for hairpins to be made for all of the female students. I'd used the opportunity to order one from Bertilde, whom I rarely saw due to serving in Lady Rosemine's chambers in the castle. A broad smile spread across my sister's face when I mentioned the hairpin. I was glad to see that she appreciated it. That aside, I said, has the cloth I chose during the dyeing event arrived yet? Yes, it has. Due to your selection and detailed report, we succeeded in incorporating the style into our accessories. As it stands, we are making shawls, lapels, and ribbons with it. I'm told there weren't enough time or cloth to prepare an entire winter outfit. Because the dyeing event had taken place in the castle, few nobles living in the provinces had known about it. Trends frequently began in the nobles' quarter and spread from there, but I'd chosen this cloth personally and ordered those managing our winter estate to send it home for me. Father was overjoyed when the cloth and letter arrived, Bertilde said. Ever since he became Lady Rosemine's retainer, he has enjoyed a crystal clear image of the nobles' quarter and its trends. Goodness, it was the least I could do. I mean, I am the next Guy Groschel. How reliable, sister. I shall strive to support you as much as I can. We smiled at each other, sent word that we had finished preparing the guest chambers, and then headed to Mother's room to ask about the dinner menu. The lady of the house had chambers on the first floor, meaning she could easily instruct the servants when we had visitors. Mother, Lady Rosemine's room has been prepared, I said. Excellent work, both of you, she replied. Now, Brunhilde, there is something important we must speak about. May I request a moment of your time before Lady Rosemine returns? Certainly. Run along now, Bertilde. Until my lady came back, there wouldn't be any more attendant work for me to complete. I sent Bertelli out of the room and turned to face my mother. Something must have happened, for she seemed a little bit weary. The second wife now carries a child, she announced. If she gives birth to a boy, then he will most likely become the next Guy Groschel instead of you. Oh, yeah, this. The ground seemed to crumble beneath me, and my vision blurred as if someone had just spun me around. Men were at an overwhelming disadvantage when it came to inheriting land. Mother must have had strong opinions on the matter. Maybe that was why she came across as exhausted. I wonder, what will the future hold for us if she does have a boy? Mother asked, her tone worried. I drew my eyebrows into a frown. If such an outcome came to pass, then the second wife would start to be prioritized, and my mother's position would grow increasingly unstable. Mother would remain in this estate no matter what happened, but her future depended on whether I became the next Geeb. No good will come of worrying about a baby who has yet to even be born, I said at last. Even if the second wife does produce a son, that does not necessarily mean my claim to being successor will change. Are you sure? Mother asked, cocking her head at me. She had good reason to be skeptical, but I refused to give up so soon. Geebs held a great deal more influence than common archnobles. I'd embraced that fact during the recent dying event, where, for the first time, I had assisted in creating new trends rather than merely helping to spread them. As you and Father both know, I brought the printing industry to Groschel as Lady Rosemine's retainer, and I play a crucial role in propagating her trends. During my time at the Academy, I even developed the skills necessary to socialize with royalty and greater duchies. Father understands this, surely. By marrying someone powerful and obtaining the support of the future Ob's first wife, I can overcome the gender barrier with ease. Unless this potential rival serves Lord Wolfried and achieves equally impressive feats, that is. I elected to hold my tongue, not wanting to exacerbate my mother's concerns. The Ob obviously had more power than the first wife. As it stood, Father would never allow a son of his to serve Lord Wolfried, but such sentiments could easily change over the span of a decade. Mother examined me closely before letting out a small relieved sigh. We had reached the end of our serious conversation, I thought. But then her expression took a severe turn. If securing Lady Rosemine's support is the goal, then why not marry Lord Hartmut? Out of the question, I said at once, loath to even consider such a terrifying idea. He would surely refuse. It simply isn't worth thinking about for the moment. He's not, he needs to be with Clarissa. Those two are two peas in a pod. Oh my, but he has an excellent reputation as an apprentice scholar, and Lady Rosemine holds him in high regard, does she not? He is Elias Gang and the third son of an archnoble, not its successor, and as you both serve the same lady, I trust you know him better than most. It is because I know him so well that I am sure it will not work. Hartmut enjoys nothing more than serving Lady Rosemine. He would rather remain in her retinue than support Guy Groschel or even rule the province. More than that, however, I would rather take someone normal as my husband. Yeah, Hartmut's not normal. He is not. On the surface, Hartmut was the perfect choice, but his every wonderful trait was smothered by his unbearable obsession with Lady Rosemine. I doubted any woman in the world would want to marry someone whose eyes were set squarely on someone else. Ardley had given up hope, lamenting that his status was his only allure, and seemed to have come to terms with the fact that he might never take a wife at all. Hartmut's elder brother, or any other archnoble for that matter, would make for a vastly superior choice, I said, not to mention the wealth of excellent men beyond our borders. Considering how quickly Lady Rosemine has been securing new connections, we can expect to be increasingly involved with top-ranking duchies. I would rather find a husband from there. If my lady remained in Ehrenfest as its first wife, the Elias Gangs wouldn't ostracize a groom from any other duchy. I suspected that as the printing industry expanded, they would actually come to value relations with other duchies. Do you really consider that the best move? Mother asked at length. Strengthening our bloodlines would put me more at ease. I could sympathize with her concerns. She was insulated from how much the Royal Academy had changed. But as Lady Rosemine's retainer, I could sense the new Ehrenfest that was on the horizon. As long as I am alive, Mother, I would not allow you to be isolated in your own home. I shall do everything I can to ensure that you and Bertilde have bright futures. In return, I only ask that you give up on marrying Hartmut into our family. Please! Because Hartmut he's not normal. He's not normal at all. After dinner that evening, we were informed of two opinions about our province's printing industry. I did not know why Lady Rosemine prioritized the thoughts of commoners over those of noble scholars, but as I was determined to find out. Unless I cleared up my confusion, everything would fall apart. I posed my question to Lady Rosemine while she was getting ready for bed, but her response was largely unhelpful. One thing was clear to me, though. The printing industry in Groschel was on track to fail, and Lady Rosemine was resigned to that fact. Good night, I said, then exited the room. All done? Asked a voice. For some strange reason, Hartman was waiting in the corridor. Let's have a chat. My expression hardened. Mother must have had something to do with this. Now was no time for frivolous matchmaking. I needed to speak with Father about the printing industry. Hartman, It's about Lady Rosemine and the printing industry. You still can't grasp her logic, I assume. Nope, she cannot. Are you implying that you can? I gathered as much information from the temple as I could precisely for that reason, Hartman explained. Let's go to Lady Avara's room. She made time for us. He had already made the arrangements, it seemed, a sign he knew I would never refuse. His knowledge of both Our Lady and the printing industry was superior to my own. You are so perfect in your preparations, I said. In truth, I find it a tad irritating. Perfect? No, far from it, Hartman frowned, and shook his head as though remembering some past blunder. He inhaled slowly, then started toward Lady Avara's guest room. I went with him. To start with, Hartman said, one cannot lump the Gutenbergs in with the rest of the commoners. Excuse me? They are Lady Rosemine's arms and legs. She values their reports as much as we value those from our family and trusted attendants. Surely you jest. I would trust a report from my family more than one from a random scholar. The thought of a noble placing that much faith in commoners was absurd to me. I understand your confusion better than you think. I made the same mistake at first. You erred as well, Hartman, I asked. It was comforting to hear that even a scholar with his perfect reputation, a man whom Lady Rosemine trusted so utterly, had struggled to wrap his head around the circumstance. Anybody would. Ferdinand didn't even understand it at times. I still remember my first time sitting in on a meeting with the lower city merchants in the temple, he said. Their crude speech, general rudeness, and outrageous demands had upset him to the point of chastising them. Is it not natural to warn commoners when they overstep, I asked. That was my thought. They were using Lady Rosemine's compassion to speak impudently, and merely listening to them struck me with displeasure. But when I spoke out against them, Lady Rosemine scolded me. She was so outraged that her eyes changed color slightly, and thought, though it shames me to admit it, I was so enraptured by her crushing that a shiver ran down my spine. Dude. Enough, Hartman. I'm not interested in your infatuation. Tell me only the objective reality of what Lady Rosemine said to you. Hartman shut his mouth unamused, and then continued, in a more level tone. She told me not to interfere, and as she had called the merchants there specifically to hear their honest opinions, and threatened to ban arch scholars and retainers from all future meetings if I dared to interrupt them again. She was even more furious than during the Traugott incident, and a chill ran through me as I feared she might relieve me of duty. Traugott's rudeness had no bounds, yet Lady Rosemine had seemed more outraged about the interruption during her meeting. Hartman wore a wry smile as he conveyed this to me, but it was no laughing matter. Despite my being an archnoble, it became painfully obvious that Lady Rosemine considered the lower city merchant's opinion more important than my own, Hartman continued. One cannot earn her approval by serving her as one would any other member of the archducal family. She prioritized the lower city merchants over you? It was hard to believe, but Hartman had attended these meetings and gone to the lower city with her. He had to be speaking the truth. Lady Rosemine was raised in the temple, and she still spends more time there as the High Bishop than she does in the castle. She's been advancing matters from her own perspective with a fairly weak grasp on noble society. In other words, she's just proceeding in the way that makes sense to her. Then we must teach her our ways. Surely that was our duty as her retainers. Hartman thought for a moment, then shook his head. Are you going to advise Lady Rosemine to prioritize nobles over commoners? That will never work. As important as it is for her to learn our ways, her knowledge of the printing industry is unmatched. She is ahead of the curve and would do well to respect her position. Ahead of the curve? In what sense exactly? The printing industry was founded through honest, detailed conversations between Lady Rosemine and the Gutenbergs. No good can come from forcing them to change their ways. It would work about as well as trying to pour one's mana into one another person's face stone. Having made his point that we should stick with Lady Rosemine's methods if we wanted the printing industry to succeed, Hartman knocked on the door to Lady Avara's room. I was told you wished to discuss something important about the printing industry. Hartman began to explain the circumstances. I chimed in every now and again with details from my earlier conversation with Lady Rosemine. My lady said that Groschel operates differently from other provinces, and that this would lead to the collapse of our printing industry. Do you know what she meant by that? I thought Lady Avara might also have had a hard time keeping up with Lady Rosemine, but she nodded at once as though the conclusion was obvious. Indeed, Groschel could not be more different from Holdensdale. Would you care to elaborate? Consider how distant the Geeves and nobles are from the commoners. Do you recall that when Lady Rosemine arrived, she asked Geeve Groschel where the province held its religious ceremonies? I was surprised to learn that he could not answer. In Holdensdale, the Geeve personally directs spring prayer and the harvest festival. For my sake, Lady Avara went on to explain how such ceremonies were performed in Holdensdale. Nobles and commoners would come together to sing, dance, and express their gratitude to the gods for the year's harvest. A gathering of that kind could never happen in Groshel. You must reconsider how land-owning nobles should act, Lady Avara continued. It is the Geeb's duty to navigate the strengths and weaknesses of their provinces while guiding and protecting its commoners. Is that being done here in Groshel? In an instant, I was overcome with shame. My entire body burned with embarrassment. The nobles of Groshel prided themselves on having a more distinct nobles' quarter than any other province in the duchy. We distanced ourselves from commoners as much as we could. Yep, they are not doing it. Yeah, no. Groshel was built for Lady Gabriel, and the customs from those days have endured ever since, Lady Avara explained. It is rather ironic that despite the Lies Gang's hatred of both her and Lady Veronica, Groshel continues to follow their wishes by striving to be as close to the noble's quarter as it can. A cold air hangs over this province, and it could very well result in the death of its printing industry. Lady Avara's warning echoed in my mind. She asserted that Lady Gabrielle's philosophy had completely died Groshel, and that the province's capacity to change would decide the success of its printing industry. I was at a loss for words. If you, Brunhilde, wished for the printing industry to succeed, then heed the precedents of success and follow in their footsteps. How could you ever grow if you cleave stubbornly to your ways and ignore the methods that led others to triumph? You need a change of attitude. The very act of trying to grow is important. Groshel will need to change its entire perspective, I asked, flushing with fear at the thought of what I was being asked to do. Was transforming the attitudes of my fellow nobles and encouraging them to mimic Lady Rosemine's relationship with commoners even achievable? It was beyond me at the very least. Lady Avara must have seen me recoil. She placed a contemplative hand on her cheek and gave me a reassuring smile that reached her dark eyes. Embracing change is easier than you think, she assured me. You are a testament to that. If Cornelius's reports are to be believed, your common sense was largely useless when serving Lady Rosemary at the Royal Academy, was it not? Yet you still strove to adapt to her methods. I thought back to my time at the Academy. As I said to Bertilde, each day had come with its own surprises. In her desperation to start visiting the library, Lady Rosemary had declared that everyone would pass each of the classes the first time around. She had then attended the library tea party, received an abrupt summons from the royal family, and passed out at a truly inopportune moment. Well, I mean, that was not her fault. Unprecedented events had waited around every corner, and each time when reared its head, I agonized over how best to proceed. The printing industry demands the same approach, Lady Avara said. You can accept change or obstinately reject it. The choice rests with Groshel. I could see the path ahead of me branching the two. Still receiving such high praise for my treatment of all the incidents at the Royal Academy made my world feel so much brighter. It was your Geeb, not the commoners, who decided to bring the printing industry to Groshel, Lady Avara continued, and yet the commoners are obeying his orders and developing the industry as per the Gutenberg's teachings. Nothing has failed, there is simply room for improvement. Hartman nodded in agreement. You seem to think all is lost, Brunhilde, but even Hollensdale faced problems when it started producing letter types. Its successes came from how quickly it responded to them. There are plenty of solutions, be it using magic tools to clean the water, moving the workshop someplace else, or even just finding a way to make dirty water work. My two advisors assured me that these decisions rested with Geek Groshel. If we had solutions to our problems and some considerate hands to guide us, then I wished to do my bit and embrace the changes we needed. I could not expect my lady to accept foreign wisdom unless I did the same. As the next Geek Groshel, I wished to put my father on the right path, I said, my eyes brimming with resolve. Lady Avara, Hartman, my apologies, but can you accompany me tomorrow after breakfast? They both gave reassuring nods. But of course, if your printing industry collapses, it will be to the detriment of Lady Rosemine's wishes. I cannot allow that to happen, as I shall devote my all to your cause. I appreciate Hartman's enthusiasm, but I wish he wouldn't. Speaking my mind was out of the question, so I responded with a small smile. Okay. I think I'm going to end it off here, guys. I'll get to the next part a little bit later today. My throat is still hurting. I don't know why. Because like I said, I woke up like this. So, I don't know. Maybe I have gotten something. I don't know. I'll let you guys know if anything, if changes with that. Like if my voice starts going out. If my voice starts going out, then I can't do shit, you know. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video.